Hi, welcome back to the Playwright with the TypeScript course. In this video we are going to explore essential best practices for the test automation with the Playwright. Maintaining automation code can be challenging, but good code structure makes it breeze. We'll start by discussing how to structure automation code for maintainability, readability, and scalability, of course. The page object model itself, which I mentioned in the previous video, is a design pattern that simplifies test maintenance. So I will guide you through implementing page object model with Playwright, ensuring that your tests actually organized, reusable, and easy to maintain. And also we will touch a bit about data-driven development, which is DDD. So the data-driven testing allows you to test scenarios and multiply data sets. We will explore how to perform data-driven testing with the Playwright, making your test more comprehensive. So as previously, we have the index.html page, which is obviously the same from the previous videos. I will create the workshop file, which is workshop 8 .spec.TypeScript. And so what we're gonna do here is actually leave this file alone for a second. And what we want to create is another folder inside of the workshop 8. So we will fully implement the structure of page object model. We'll have the page, and inside this page, the page itself and the page object model consider each page as just separate class. So what we want to do is to first have the page TS. So in here in our file page.ts, we actually want to import the page type from our Playwright test. And now we can create class, which is page object. And this would have we would want to export this because we later will use it inside the test. So we want to have the here we will have the buttons and elements, but first let's create the constructor, which will be the page with the type page. And inside this page we'll have the supper page extension, and then we'll have to use the this with the button, and later on we'll put button here, and as well the input, for example, because those are elements we are actually using on our page. Cool. So as you might notice, I already put supper here. So what I want to do is to actually create another class with the abstract elements. There is a lot of you can have a lot of pages actually, and a lot of methods inside those pages could be duplicated. That's why I want to have an example abstract page. So we would call it abstract page. This page would exist with the methods which can be used from with the different classes. So this would also import the page, and from Playwright test. We would also want to export the abstract class with abstract page. Perfect. And then we want to give it the page to be protected, which is a good practice, and this has to have page type. Also, let's declare the constructor with the page of type page. So we can use this dot page to be page. And let's add some example method like abstract open. All right, because we usually open our page a lot. So for example, it's to be the string URL. Cool. and of course it have to return the promise, because actually every time we open in or interact with some elements within the Playwright or the browser, so it's always synchronous. Cool, now let's import the abstract page here. Cool, it's auto imported. So now we did export the abstract page. What we want to do is actually extend this, right? We want to say that it extends abstract page. It's actually extends. Nice. So we did inherit the open, but we not yet implemented from the abstract page, right? So let's make it happen. So we want our open to be a sync method. We'd create the open and pass it the URL, which should always be string, and then it would return the promise. And after it, we would have to await for this .page .go to URL. So as you can see that I'm basically duplicating myself with the code which we're written inside. So now we can use only open method. Perfect. And you see this implemented. We will back to those buttons later. But what I wanted to mention that there is a components. There is a different approach with the pages. So somebody keep the selectors, etc. inside the page object, but I prefer to have the separate components for every element. By the element, I mean that, for example, on a page you have 10 inputs, or you have 20 buttons, or you have drop downs. So basically the functionality and idea of selectors there will be the same. So they will copy only the first part of the selector. This means that we can have the really separate components for the class and really avoid to duplicating a lot of code inside. And we will make our classes really reusable and won't make it to have a lot of duplications. Let's first create the button element, right? Our button is pretty simple. Let's create a button file and call it button.ts. So inside this button, we also will import the page type, and we will export the class of button. For such elements, you also can create your separate abstract elements, which then will be extended with your real elements like button and which will be extended with your elements like button or input. So this would have the private page of type page, and after it we want to use the constructor, pass in the page, and inside such constructor we will have to give this page, assign it to page, and we want to have some method. Actually, what we do with buttons, we click on it, so it would make sense to have such thing. So let's use the click button, and it will be the selector. We will pass in the selector inside this function, or rather call it method, and it will also return the promise. So now let's actually write some Playwright here. So we want to await for this page. We clicked with the selector. Click on right selector. So cool, we are using this selector, and now we can use this button in our page. But first let's add also the input, so that we have the input and checkboxes. The inputs, there's two of them, so it makes sense to have it as a separate element. So new file, input.ts. So maybe let's copy the structure of the button.ts and paste it here. We paste the input here. This also be page. The constructor stay the same, but we will add the different method. Like this. Okay, this will be a sync. And what we want to do is actually set the input value of input. So this will accept the selector as a string. And of course the value we want to input, right? It also should be the string. And as always, we'll return the promise. Wait. Then we are waiting for page.fill to pass the selector and value. So those are simple methods. So now we actually can work back with our page. Let's import the input, and then let's import the button. From button. Perfect. So now we can actually assign the button to be to know that is using the class of the button. So it will have the type. This actually should be like this. This actually should look like this. This have to be the button with the page. You can see some errors here, but we will back it to in a minute. So you can see that actually we don't have the button property yet. So let's declare it. So it has to be private button with type of button, of course. And the same with the input. Cool. Now we have those type. Errors are gone. So as you remember from the video before, we did use the selectors inside of the test suites. Like this. For every page we did click and pass the selector. The page objects actually allow us to use those selectors to actually keep those selectors inside the page objects. What we're gonna do now is that actually reduce the selectors. We put the read-only, and let's call it first name input selector, and it should be first name ID, like this, right? And then another read-only that we want the age selector, which will be age. And then we want to have a student selector checkbox. Actually, let's say that checkbox selector. Cool. And a student, of course. All right. What else do we have? So we have the apply data button. And this will be apply data button selector. And this would be the apply data. Now we want to get the element which is actually displaying the result for the first name, age, and returning the true or false for the displayed student or not. Let's actually copy some of those. And this would have to be display first name, first name. This one will be display age, and this one will be display is student. So let's have the ID display first name, display age, and display is student. Cool. So now we are ready to go, at least to open the, at least to use the method of open the page, right? But now there is a couple more things to be added. So if we want to reuse the code, let's have some useful methods, and like most common one which we were using before. For example, we want to apply data. So when the data is filled, we want to push the button, right? So we would call this apply data. And that would also return promise. And such would be awaiting for this, and we are actually using button, and as you remember, the button has the click button, and we use it just like that, and then we are passing the selector which needed, and the selector is apply data button selector. It's right there. Actually typo here. Cool. Let's add another one. This would be the fill first name. So once we have the first fill name, we got to have not the button but the input, and after that we can use the set input value method, which will be the actually this dot age input selector and the value itself. But we actually need to pass this value, which be value string. Cool. And the next one will be the fill age. So we fill age, return promise. All right. Let's get to await this dot input. Actually, pretty much the same as for the first name input selector, but I see that I made a mistake, so it has to be the first name input selector, and there should be the age input selector. We're also passing value here, which is string. All right, so fill age, and then we need to check if student, right? Copy paste it. Check is student. So passing no value here, and then we have to do this dot page dot check, and this is student checkbox selector. Cool. And we also might have one more method, which would be sync text, actually, because we often use it. Often we get in the text element. So what I want to do here is actually to do the selector string, also to be the promise void, promise void, or and this will actually have to assign the text context. So the text context will await for this dot page dot text context, where we'll pass the selector from which we have to take the text context, and then we will return return the text contents constant. All right. So this function could actually return either of string or null. So we can just make sure that null is also expected, and if there is no value, so we will return null, and still get the error because we actually not returning the void, we're returning the string. Let me check. From a string, I guess I mispronounced something here. Yes, this has to be like that. Right. And so the selector with the string, of course, have to be the selector. Perfect. So now we can really start work with our spec file. So we need to import the text and expect from Playwright. Test, sorry. And import page object from page. So as you can see, this import is automatically imported, automatically selected in the VS Code. So let's write this describe, and this would be, let's call it simple test. Right, and this was return function, and here we will declare test. Let's call it test1, and fill all inputs like this. Perfect. This would be a async page. All right, so we have a test, and just before we jump to the test, let's actually prepare the before each. You remember we used a couple videos before, and so there will be a sync with the browser actually, not the page. But inside this before each, what I want to do is to actually assign the page for awaiting the browser dot new page. So it's basically doing the same, and also we need to import browser. Oh no. All right, here's the way why it was crossing with red. So we're actually doing the same. We're assigning the new page to the page constant with it basically, but I wanted to show you that there is a really different possibilities and flexibility of the Playwright framework, how we can actually work with the page. So now we also have to assign our page object, which has to be written like that. Page object with new page object page. So we can see that we are actually importing this page object model, and now we are ready to use it. So before we start to use it, we need to await, we need to open the page, of course. And the thing is that we already can use the page object model itself. So now I don't want to use page. What I want to do is actually to use page object. So this would allow us to use all the methods, existing methods from the Playwright with this page object, with our page. And so we can use the method we are actually have inside the page object. So the open and just passing the value of our page of the workshop 8. All right. So I guess the file is complete, but I see some error. Let me check why. Oh, because of this. Right, let's finally move to test. We have prepared our environment. So now we want to await the page object and use the existing method like fill first name with the John, of course. And then we want to fill H. Fill H and pass the 30. And then of course we can check the checkbox button that this is a student. So await page object dot check is student, and of course apply data. Await and implement the assertions. Oops, like that. Expect page object dot text method, which we implemented before, to use page object dot display first name, and we want this to be John as previously. So we will do the tree assertion for display age and for the display student, and this one want to be yes, and here we want to have 30. So alright, let's make this test work. Let me first check if I didn't left any only. I did. Let's actually skip this. Alright, so, and then of course we don't have to use the page anymore, because we're actually using the page from the page object itself. Terminal, now it's good. Okay. You can see the test is passed. So let me go back to the our workshop where we did fill the data for the same page. So as you can see that we are really actually this code is pretty much the same, but we are really allowing ourselves to write the code in more clear way, and then there is much more readability, for example, and you can just read and understand which page we are using. Instead of page object, you can always write the landing page, selling page, whatever is actually needed, and then this like increase your readability in the really much. All right, let's check another test. So now once we're done with a page object, implementing our page object for the example website, let's actually try to write the similar test cases with the DD. Let's copy this page and just rename it to 8 DDD. Cool. And what we will actually need is to create the JSON file so we can hold the multiply of accounts or data for our test suite and make the tests really using different data. So just make it simple and create the file from here, which will be the test data.json. And what we want here is the array of objects, and there will be a first object with the test names. So in this object we want to use the test name, which obviously could be changed, and this would be like that. And for example, test1 fill input. The second one will be first name, and say John, age, of course, and say 30. Then is student, and we put it as a true. Just comma here. All right. So expected first name. Here we are actually passing the value which we will assign later, and this will be John 2, and make it simpler, age 30, comma, and expected is student, expected age, expected is student, let's say yes. So now we have the test case for the positive scenario, but now let's prepare the test case for negative scenario when somebody is not student. Copy this and let's call it negative test, and only change that student no, expected age 25, and the student is Alice, real age 25, and the student is false. So then expected first name Alice. Perfect. Now we have our test data, so let's actually import this test data. So we have already test and expect imported, page object imported, but let's also import the test data. So it's be imported all as test data from the test data JSON. So this is stay much more or less the same. We also use the page object, we have a browser, we have our page open, and here it is our first test. So to make this possible, we can delete this, and there is not much sense to write like 2 test suites for this data. What we can do is actually write the for loop to run our data through the same test. So what we would need is run the for const data of object values test data. And we would say that if data test name is test 1 is that one, or data test name or data test name test 2. Actually, let me copy it. Test 2. Okay, then we need the value to be returned. Actually, let's delete the additional spaces from here. And so now, when on the test data.test name and async return the test. So now we are waiting for page object fill first name, data first name. But before we move along, let me actually explain what did we make here, because it would be kind of confusing. So basically, as I mentioned before, we don't want to write 2 tests. So what I want to do here is, for case when the test for cases when we given the positive test, we want to run this code, and there will be another additional if inside. So we will actually can avoid multiplies and run the data from the JSON through this file. Okay. Let's page object. So we want to fill the age, data.age. So as you can see, we don't specify is it a positive or not. The test will just pick the name and run the data from there. So, and also, what we want to say that if data is student is true, so then we would like to await for page object check a student. So if the test find out that here is the student is true, then we will proceed with this line. Otherwise, we won't like run this line. So page object, apply data, and we just click the enter button. And after this, we would like to do our awaits, which we will copy from here, for example, and you would be able also to see the difference between those and those. So we're actually waiting for page object.text, and text are getting from the page object display first name, but the difference is we don't explicitly put the data here. We just go like data expected first name. The same for here. Expected age and expected is student. Cool. Now let's actually test if this whole thing is working or not. All right. I'm not sure if the only will work here, because the only is inside the loop, so the Playwright might not recognize it. Let's check. Let's skip this test. All right, you can see that 2 workers was run because we actually have 2 separate tests, and then actually 2 tests was passed. Perfect. That's what actually we need for confirmation that the tests actually are working well and tests are not false positive, which I highly recommend to check for every test you write. So here we go. Let's actually print the data. I don't know why did I put it twice. The one time is totally enough. All right, perfect. Cool. So you see the first time it was student, second time no. So this is the way how you actually can work with data-driven testing. And this is specifically handful when you have a lot of data and you need to run your test with this data. This is really common within the commercial projects. Also in this video, together with data-driven testing, we implement the page object model, which is commonly used in every test repository, which is a commercial one. And I guess you will face in it a lot. In the next video, we will integrate a Playwright test with a continuous integration using GitHub Action. I'm really excited about that, so stay tuned and see you in the next one.